"Sign this prenup or I'm gone," she ultimated. I signed, then added a clause she missed. Wedding day? She learned I'd already transferred everything to my dog's trust. 3 weeks before our wedding, Brittany walked into my home office carrying a thick manila folder and wearing that determined expression I'd learned to recognize over our 2-year relationship. I was reviewing code for my software company when she dropped the documents on my desk with theatrical precision. "My family's attorney insists we need this prenuptial agreement," she announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "It's just to protect my future inheritance, you understand." I picked up the 47-page document, immediately noticing the letterhead from one of the city's most expensive law firms. The same firm her trust fund family had used for 3 generations. As I flipped through the pages, my stomach dropped. This wasn't protection for her inheritance. This was a comprehensive asset grab disguised as legal precaution. The agreement gave Brittany claims to 40% of my software company's equity, despite her never contributing a single line of code or business idea. It included provisions for my vintage car collection, the 1967 Mustang and 1970 Camaro I'd restored myself over countless weekends. Most painfully, it even mentioned my deceased grandmother's jewelry collection, pieces Brittany had always admired a little too enthusiastically whenever she saw them displayed in my bedroom. "Brittany, this seems pretty one-sided," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What exactly are you protecting me from?" Her laugh had an edge I'd never heard before. "Jake, be realistic. I'm the one taking the bigger risk here. My family has generational wealth. You have a little tech company and some old cars." A little tech company that generated 7 figures annually, but I didn't correct her. "If you really love me," she continued, "signing this shouldn't be a problem. My parents won't even attend the wedding unless we have proper legal protection in place." The threat was clear: sign or lose everything we'd planned for our future together. But as I read through more clauses, I realized something crucial. For all their expensive legal counsel, they'd made one critical oversight. The prenup only protected assets I currently owned, not assets I might transfer before the marriage became official. "I need a few days to review this with my own attorney," I told her, keeping my expression cooperative. "Just to understand everything properly." "Fine, but don't take too long. The wedding's in 3 weeks, and I won't walk down that aisle without signed documents." That night, I called my attorney Marcus, a sharp guy who'd handled my business contracts for years. "Marcus, hypothetically speaking, are there any legal structures that could protect assets from prenuptial agreements?" His pause told me he understood exactly what I was really asking. "Well, irrevocable trusts established before marriage are generally protected, especially if they serve legitimate purposes like caring for dependents or, say, beloved pets." Rex, my German shepherd, lifted his head from his bed as if sensing he was being discussed. "Pet trusts are actually quite sophisticated legal instruments," Marcus continued. "In this state, they can be structured to last the animal's entire lifetime, and the assets become completely separate from the grantor's personal wealth." I scratched Rex behind the ears while considering the beautiful irony. Brittany had always complained that I spoiled Rex too much, buying him premium food and expensive toys. Now her own prenup might force me to spoil him even more. How quickly could something like that be established? I asked. For the right client with urgent needs? 5 business days. The next morning, I signed Brittany's prenuptial agreement with a smile, watching her face light up with triumphant satisfaction. She immediately started calling wedding vendors to confirm final details, completely absorbed in planning what she thought would be her financial security ceremony. Meanwhile, I began creating the most comprehensive pet trust in state history, preparing to make Rex one of the wealthiest dogs in America while technically leaving myself with just enough assets to avoid suspicion. Brittany had been so focused on protecting herself from my wealth, she'd never considered that I might protect my wealth from her. Working with Marcus, I created what he called the most sophisticated pet trust in state history. Over the next week, while Brittany obsessed over wedding flower arrangements and argued with the caterer about menu changes, I systematically transferred 90% of my assets into Rex's irrevocable trust fund. The process was surprisingly straightforward once Marcus explained the legal framework. My software company shares moved first, restructured so that Rex's trust owned controlling interest while I remained as CEO and primary beneficiary of his care needs. My business partner, Kevin, thought I'd lost my mind until I explained the prenup situation. "So you're basically making your dog your boss to spite your fiancé?" he asked, reviewing the paperwork. "I'm protecting my life's work from someone who views it as her retirement plan," I corrected. "Rex just happens to be a more trustworthy business partner than Brittany." Kevin helped facilitate the ownership transfers, adjusting our corporate structure so everything remained functional while technically belonging to Rex. My real estate investments followed, the rental properties I'd accumulated over 5 years now legally owned by a German Shepherd with his own tax identification number. The vintage car collection proved trickier, but Marcus found precedent for pets owning valuable assets through properly structured trusts. Even my bank accounts transferred over, except for one checking account with enough funds to maintain my normal lifestyle without raising Brittany's suspicions. "The beauty of this structure," Marcus explained during our final meeting, "is that you remain Rex's primary caretaker and trust beneficiary. You control all decisions, but legally, you own almost nothing. If anyone challenges your lifestyle, you're simply a well-compensated employee of Rex's trust." I signed the final documents while Rex slept peacefully in his bed, completely unaware he'd just become one of the wealthiest dogs in America. His trust portfolio included 7-figure software company equity, multiple real estate investments, classic cars, and enough liquid assets to keep him in premium kibble for several lifetimes. Meanwhile, Brittany continued making expensive wedding decisions, charging thousands to my credit cards while discussing our future financial security with increasing frequency. She'd started referring to my house as our estate and mentioned hiring professional interior designers to redecorate immediately after the honeymoon. Her friends constantly praised her for landing such a successful entrepreneur, while she smugly discussed her post-wedding plans to optimize our combined resources for maximum growth potential. During dress fittings, I overheard her telling her maid of honor, "Jake's so focused on his little computer business, he doesn't understand real wealth management. After we're married, I'll help him see the bigger picture." The bigger picture, apparently, involved expensive vacations, luxury shopping, and social climbing using my assets as her ladder. She'd already booked our Bali honeymoon using my credit card, the same card that would be canceled within days of the wedding when the bank discovered my dramatically reduced net worth. "Rex is going to love having the house to himself while we're gone," she said one evening, absently scratching his ears. "Maybe we should get him a dog walker since you won't be here to spoil him constantly." I smiled, watching Rex enjoy attention from someone who had no idea she just petted a multimillionaire. The irony was perfect. Brittany complained constantly about my excessive spending on Rex's premium food, expensive toys, and regular grooming appointments. Now, legally speaking, Rex could afford to buy the entire pet store while she'd be entitled to nothing but whatever salary his trust paid me as his caretaker. The final trust documents established Rex's care in perpetuity, with dedicated funds for veterinary expenses, premium nutrition, emergency medical care, and even a backup caretaker should anything happen to me. Marcus had thought of everything, creating an unbreakable legal fortress around my life's work while Brittany remained completely focused on wedding seating charts and menu selections. As our wedding day approached, I felt increasingly calm about the future. Brittany's prenup would indeed protect her from my assets that no longer existed in my name. During our final wedding preparations, Brittany's true character emerged with stunning clarity. She transformed from the charming woman I'd fallen for into someone who dismissed every preference I expressed about our celebration while making increasingly expensive decisions she expected me to fund through what would soon be her assets. The wedding venue suddenly needed upgraded lighting packages. The reception required premium bar service instead of standard options. The honeymoon she'd booked to Bali somehow expanded from 5 days to 2 weeks, with first-class flights and ocean view suites that cost more than most people's annual salaries. "Don't worry about the expenses," she'd say whenever I questioned another upgrade. "We'll have plenty of resources to cover everything after Saturday." Her casual confidence about accessing my wealth after the ceremony felt increasingly ominous as the week progressed. She'd started referring to my software company as our business and mentioned bringing in efficiency consultants to maximize profitability. During a dinner with her parents, she openly discussed redecorating my house with professional interior designers who specialized in modern luxury aesthetics. Jake's place has potential, she told her mother while cutting her steak, but it needs sophisticated touches. The furniture is so bachelor basic, and don't get me started on that ridiculous dog bed taking up half the living room. Rex's orthopedic memory foam bed had cost $400, but now it seemed like a bargain considering he was technically sleeping on furniture he owned. Meanwhile, I completed the final trust paperwork with Marcus, ensuring every legal detail was bulletproof. Rex now had a dedicated trustee who would manage his portfolio if I became unavailable, comprehensive veterinary care funding for his entire lifetime, and even a backup caretaker who'd been thoroughly vetted and contractually obligated to maintain his current lifestyle standards. Your dog has better financial planning than most humans, Marcus observed, reviewing the completed documents. If Rex could understand compound interest, he'd be insufferably smug about his portfolio performance. The trust structure was genuinely impressive. Rex's assets were protected by multiple legal layers, professionally managed, and completely insulated from any future claims against my personal wealth. Technically, I'd become Rex's highest-paid employee, earning a substantial salary for maintaining his care while having no legal ownership of the underlying assets. Brittany remained blissfully unaware of these developments, too absorbed in wedding details and post-marriage financial fantasies to notice anything unusual about my behavior. Her friends constantly praised her strategic thinking during bridal events, with conversations that made my skin crawl in retrospect. "Brittany's so smart for getting that prenup," her maid of honor gushed during the rehearsal dinner. "She's protecting her family's generational wealth while positioning herself to optimize Jake's business assets." "Exactly," Brittany agreed, raising her champagne glass. "Why let emotional decisions compromise sound financial planning? After Saturday, we'll be able to implement some real growth strategies instead of Jake's conservative approach." Her conservative approach apparently meant not leveraging everything I owned to fund her lifestyle ambitions and social climbing aspirations. She'd already researched country club memberships, luxury car dealerships, and vacation properties in exclusive locations where her family's friends maintained summer homes. The irony was delicious. While Brittany planned to optimize our resources, those resources were legally earning kibble money for a German Shepherd who spent his days napping and chasing tennis balls. Rex had become one of the state's wealthiest individuals without even understanding the concept of money, while Brittany's sophisticated financial maneuvering would leave her legally entitled to dog toys and whatever salary his trust paid me. During our final dress rehearsal, Brittany made a comment that perfectly encapsulated her true motivations. "I can't wait until tomorrow when everything becomes official," she said, adjusting her engagement ring while watching the wedding coordinator arrange flowers. "All this legal protection stuff will finally be behind us, and we can focus on building real wealth together." Real wealth that, unbeknownst to her, was now managed by professional trustees on behalf of a four-legged beneficiary who considered belly rubs more valuable than stock options. The wedding coordinator asked about special accommodations for Rex, who would be walking down the aisle as our ring bearer, wearing a custom tuxedo that had cost more than Brittany's shoes. "Just keep him away from the expensive flowers," Brittany instructed. "That dog has no appreciation for valuable things." I scratched Rex behind the ears, wondering how she'd react to learning that those expensive flowers were essentially purchased with his money, since my salary as his caretaker had funded the wedding expenses. Tomorrow, Brittany would discover that her carefully negotiated prenup had protected her from wealth that legally belonged to the most spoiled German Shepherd in America. Wedding morning arrived with Brittany practically glowing with anticipation, not the romantic kind, but the calculating satisfaction of someone about to secure their financial future. While getting her hair styled in the bridal suite, she made several comments that revealed exactly what this day meant to her beyond the ceremony itself. "I'm so relieved we'll finally have the prenup activated after today," she told her stylist, who was creating an elaborate updo that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. Jake's been so conservative with his money, but now I'll have legal access to real wealth. We can finally start living like successful people instead of penny pinching like college students. Her maid of honor laughed approvingly. It's about time you got what you deserve, Britt. You've been way too patient with his modest lifestyle. I was getting ready in the groom's suite when Marcus arrived, dressed impeccably as a wedding guest but carrying a discreet folder that contained the most important documents of my life. Everything's finalized, he whispered, pulling me aside while my groomsmen adjusted their ties. All trust transfers are complete and legally binding. As of this morning, Rex is officially wealthier than most small business owners in the state. We shook hands solemnly, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Whatever happened after today, my life's work was protected from someone who viewed it as her personal inheritance rather than the result of years of dedication and sacrifice. Your prenup is about to become the most expensive legal document she's ever signed, Marcus added with a slight smile. Technically, she's protected herself from assets that no longer exist in your name. The ceremony proceeded beautifully, with Rex performing his ring-bearer duties flawlessly in his custom tuxedo. He walked down the aisle with perfect composure, carrying our rings in a silk pouch attached to his collar, completely unaware that he was probably the wealthiest individual in attendance. Brittany's parents beamed with pride, clearly pleased that their daughter had secured what they believed was an advantageous marriage to a successful entrepreneur. During the reception, Brittany made an elaborate toast that revealed everything about her true motivations. To Jake and our future together, she announced, raising her champagne glass while the guests listened attentively. Today isn't just about love, it's about combining our lives, our dreams, and yes, our resources to build something amazing together. I'm so excited to finally be true partners in every sense of the word. The guests applauded enthusiastically while I maintained my composure, knowing that our combined resources now consisted of my modest salary as Rex's caretaker, his collection of chew toys, and whatever Brittany had in her own accounts. My best man Kevin struggled to keep a straight face throughout her speech, occasionally catching my eye with barely suppressed amusement. He was one of the few people who knew the real situation, and watching Brittany celebrate her financial victory while completely unaware of the actual circumstances was clearly testing his ability to remain serious. Her parents approached me during dinner, with her father offering congratulations that felt more like a business merger announcement than wedding wishes. Welcome to the family, Jake. Brittany's told us so much about your software company and investment portfolio. We're thrilled she'll finally have the security she deserves. I'm sure she'll get exactly what she's earned, I replied diplomatically, which seemed to please them immensely. They had no idea that what she'd earned through her prenup maneuvering was legal protection from wealth that now belonged to a German shepherd who was currently napping under the head table after eating too many wedding cake scraps from sympathetic guests. Later that evening, as we prepared to leave for our honeymoon flight, Brittany pulled me aside with excitement practically radiating from her. I can't believe we're finally married, she said, but her tone suggested she was more thrilled about the legal implications than the romantic ones. Tomorrow we can start making real plans for our future. I've been researching some amazing investment opportunities and luxury properties that would be perfect for us. The investment opportunities she'd researched with my money for properties we'd live in using assets that legally belong to Rex. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. As we headed to the airport, I watched Rex being taken to Kevin's house for the honeymoon period, completely content and unaware that he was now living a more financially secure life than 99% of Americans. Brittany spent the entire car ride discussing her post-wedding plans to optimize our combined wealth, while I quietly reflected on how her prenup had indeed protected both of us, just not in the way she'd intended. Our Bali honeymoon began exactly as I'd expected, with Brittany attempting to live like royalty using credit cards that were about to deliver some very unpleasant surprises. The first few days proceeded normally as we settled into the ocean view suite she'd booked, with its private infinity pool and butler service that cost more per night than most people's monthly rent. Brittany was in her element, posting Instagram stories about living our best life, while charging spa treatments, designer shopping excursions, and elaborate meals to cards she assumed were backed by unlimited resources. The reckoning came on day 4 when she decided to embark on a luxury shopping spree through Bali's high-end boutiques. She'd spotted a collection of handcrafted jewelry and designer resort wear that caught her fancy, confidently handing over my primary credit card for purchases totaling over $8,000. I watched from across the boutique as the sales associate ran the card, then frowned and tried again. After a hushed conversation with the manager, they approached Brittany with apologetic expressions that immediately triggered her defensive posture. "I'm sorry, madam, but this card has been declined due to insufficient credit limit based on the account holder's current financial status," the manager explained diplomatically. Brittany's face went through several emotions: confusion, embarrassment, then mounting panic. "That's impossible. Run it again. There must be some mistake." After 3 more declined attempts and increasingly uncomfortable exchanges with store staff, we left empty-handed while Brittany frantically called the credit card company from our hotel room. I sat on the balcony, pretending to read while listening to her increasingly frantic conversation with customer service representatives who were clearly struggling to explain the situation diplomatically. "What do you mean my husband's assets have decreased substantially? That makes no sense. We just got married 2 days ago. His net worth should be exactly the same as it was last week." The customer service representative apparently explained that recent financial statements showed my net worth had dropped dramatically, triggering automatic credit limit reductions across all accounts. Brittany spent an hour arguing with various supervisors, demanding explanations that they couldn't provide without violating privacy policies. When she finally hung up, her face was pale with confused fury. "Jake, what the hell is going on? The bank says your assets have somehow decreased by millions of dollars. How is that even possible?" I calmly pulled out the legal documents Marcus had prepared, spreading them across the coffee table like I was presenting a business proposal. "Actually, it's completely accurate. I don't technically own those assets anymore." Her eyes darted across the paperwork, trying to process legal language that clearly exceeded her comprehension. "What do you mean you don't own them? Where did they go?" "They belong to Rex's irrevocable trust. I transferred everything before we got married to protect my assets from prenuptial claims." The silence stretched for nearly a full minute as she absorbed this information. I watched her face cycle through disbelief, rage, and dawning comprehension of what had actually happened. "You gave everything to your dog?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I established a comprehensive pet trust that legally owns my former assets. I'm now essentially Rex's caretaker, earning a salary from his trust to maintain his lifestyle and well-being. It's a perfectly legal arrangement that protects his financial security." Brittany stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. "This is insane. You can't just give millions of dollars to a dog." "Actually, I can and did. The trust is irrevocable and was established before our marriage, which means your prenup protects you from assets I no longer possess." The beautiful irony wasn't lost on either of us. Her carefully crafted prenup had indeed provided protection, just not for her benefit. "But this means—" she started, then stopped as the full implications hit her. "This means you're essentially broke. I have a comfortable salary as Rex's caretaker and enough personal assets to maintain a modest lifestyle. Everything else legally belongs to Rex." Our romantic honeymoon transformed instantly into frantic damage control as Brittany spent the rest of our trip on international phone calls with lawyers, trying to understand if there was any way to challenge an irrevocable trust established for legitimate pet care purposes. The answer, consistently, was no. Back home, Brittany hired the most aggressive legal team her family's money could buy, determined to challenge what she viewed as an elaborate scheme to defraud her of rightful access to marital assets. Her attorneys were expensive, confident, and ultimately powerless against the legal fortress Marcus had constructed around Rex's trust. The lead attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia who specialized in high-asset divorces, delivered the devastating news during our first consultation meeting. "Mrs. Anderson, I've reviewed all the documentation extensively, and I'm afraid your husband's strategy was both legally brilliant and completely airtight," she explained with professional sympathy. "The trust was established before your marriage, serves legitimate purposes for animal welfare, and follows all state regulations for irrevocable pet trusts. Brittany's face had turned an alarming shade of red. But surely there's something fraudulent about transferring millions of dollars to avoid a prenuptial agreement? Actually, no. Your prenup specifically protects assets he owned at the time of marriage. Since he legally transferred those assets to his pet's trust beforehand, the prenup is working exactly as designed, protecting you from claims on assets he no longer possesses. The legal team explained that challenging the trust would require proving it was established solely to defraud creditors, but since Rex was receiving genuine care and the trust served legitimate purposes, fraud would be nearly impossible to demonstrate. Meanwhile, Marcus had structured everything so perfectly that even the most creative legal arguments couldn't find meaningful vulnerabilities. Your husband essentially executed superior estate planning, Patricia continued. He protected his assets using the same legal mechanisms wealthy families have employed for generations, just with a pet beneficiary instead of children or charities. While Brittany burned through her family's money on legal fees, word began spreading through our social circle about the situation. The story was too delicious for people to keep quiet. A woman who demanded a prenup to protect herself from her husband's wealth, only to discover he'd legally transferred everything to his German Shepherd before the wedding. The social humiliation proved almost as devastating as the financial disappointment. Brittany's friends, who'd congratulated her on landing a successful catch, now whispered about how she'd been outmaneuvered by someone she'd considered intellectually inferior. Her carefully cultivated image as a sophisticated woman who knew how to protect her interests crumbled as people realized she'd been played by her own legal documents. Can you believe Brittany married a guy whose dog is worth millions while she gets nothing? I overheard at a charity event we attended separately. She spent months bragging about her prenup strategy, and now everyone knows she's basically married to Rex's employee. The country club memberships she'd researched became impossible when background checks revealed her husband's actual financial status. Luxury car dealerships that had courted her business suddenly became unresponsive when she couldn't demonstrate sufficient income or assets. Even her family began distancing themselves, embarrassed by the public relations disaster their daughter had created through overconfidence and greed. Brittany's legal bills mounted as her attorneys explored increasingly desperate strategies. They investigated whether pet trusts could be challenged on public policy grounds, researched precedents for reversing irrevocable trusts, and even considered arguing that Rex couldn't legally consent to being a beneficiary. Every avenue led to the same conclusion. The trust was bulletproof, established for legitimate purposes, and protected by decades of legal precedent supporting animal welfare arrangements. Meanwhile, I continued my comfortable life as Rex's caretaker, earning a substantial salary for maintaining his lifestyle while having no legal stress about protecting assets from prenuptial claims. Rex remained blissfully unaware of his wealth, spending his days playing fetch, napping in expensive dog beds, and occasionally appearing in social media posts that Kevin managed for his trust's public relations purposes. The trust had even established Rex's own Instagram account, featuring photos of him enjoying premium kibble, luxury grooming sessions, and custom-made toys. The account gained thousands of followers who found the concept of a millionaire German Shepherd endlessly entertaining. Each post reminded our social circle that Rex lived better than most humans while Brittany struggled with mounting legal bills and social embarrassment. Following the richest dog in the state became a running joke among people who tagged Brittany in Rex's posts, creating a constant reminder of her failed scheme. 6 months after our wedding, Brittany's legal team finally admitted defeat. They'd exhausted every possible challenge to the trust and burned through over $200,000 of her family's money pursuing strategies that were doomed from the beginning. Patricia delivered the final verdict with professional resignation. The trust is legally unbreakable, and your prenup protects assets your husband no longer owns. 2 years later, I was living my best life while Brittany learned what financial independence actually meant for someone with her skill set and work ethic. Rex's trust had performed exceptionally well under professional management, growing substantially through smart investments while funding both his luxurious lifestyle and my comfortable salary as his dedicated caretaker. I'd used trust funds to launch a new software company, with Rex as the primary investor through his portfolio. The irony was perfect. My new venture was more successful than my previous business, partly because I could focus on innovation instead of worrying about protecting assets from gold-digging spouses. Meanwhile, Brittany had moved from her family's mansion to a modest one-bedroom apartment after her parents essentially disowned her for the embarrassing marriage scandal that had become social media fodder throughout our wealthy social circle. She'd taken a job as a sales associate at an upscale retail store, earning roughly what I used to spend on Rex's monthly grooming appointments. The transformation was remarkable. The confident woman who demanded prenuptial protection for her family's generational wealth was now folding designer clothes she couldn't afford while living paycheck to paycheck for the first time in her privileged life. Her Instagram account had evolved from luxury lifestyle posts to inspirational quotes about personal growth and independence, though the comments section often featured people tagging her in Rex's latest adventures. Our paths crossed unexpectedly at a coffee shop downtown. I was meeting Kevin to discuss expanding our new company when I spotted Brittany in line, wearing a discount store outfit that would have horrified her former self. She looked tired, older, and completely defeated by circumstances she'd created through her own greed and overconfidence. "Jake," she approached hesitantly, clutching a smartphone with a cracked screen that told its own story about her current financial situation. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk to me." "Hi, Brittany. How are you doing?" I kept my tone neutral, genuinely curious about her perspective after 2 years of consequences. "I'm managing," she said, which clearly meant struggling. "I heard about your new company. Congratulations. You always were brilliant with technology." The compliment felt hollow, coming from someone who'd previously dismissed my work as a little tech company while planning to optimize my conservative financial approach. "Thank you. It's been rewarding building something new." She shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting to say something but struggling with how to phrase it. Finally, she took a breath and dove in. "Jake, I know I have no right to ask this, but I've been thinking about Rex and all that money sitting in his trust. He's just a dog. He doesn't actually need millions of dollars for kibble and toys. Maybe there's some way we could work together to access those funds for more practical purposes." The audacity was breathtaking. Even after 2 years of consequences, she still viewed Rex's trust as money that rightfully belonged to her, just temporarily misplaced by legal technicalities. "Brittany, I can't break the trust even if I wanted to. It's irrevocable, and I have legal obligations as Rex's caretaker. Violating those obligations would be breach of fiduciary duty." "But surely there's some loophole, some way to restructure things? I mean, we're still married. That has to count for something legally." I studied her face, seeing desperation masked as reasoning. "The trust protects Rex's interests, not mine. And honestly, even if I could access those funds, why would I share them with someone who tried to steal my life's work through a prenup?" Her composure cracked slightly. "I wasn't trying to steal anything. I was protecting both of us from financial complications. You called my business a little tech company and planned to bring in efficiency consultants to optimize my conservative approach. You researched country clubs and luxury cars you expected me to fund. That's not protection, that's acquisition." She looked around the coffee shop, probably hoping no one was overhearing this conversation that highlighted her spectacular miscalculation. "I was young and stupid. I've learned from my mistakes." "Have you? Because you just asked me to violate my legal obligations so you could access money that belongs to Rex." The silence stretched between us until Kevin arrived, greeting me warmly before recognizing Brittany. His expression shifted to barely concealed amusement as he realized he was witnessing a real-time encounter between Rex's caretaker and the woman whose prenup had made it all possible. "I should go," Brittany said quietly. "My break's almost over and I can't afford to be late." As she walked toward the door, I felt something resembling pity. Not for her circumstances, which were entirely self-created, but for how completely she'd misunderstood what actually mattered in life. That evening, I sat with Rex in our comfortable living room, technically his living room, since the house belonged to his trust, watching him contentedly chew a toy that cost more than Brittany's daily wages. His Instagram account had gained another 1,000 followers that week, With people around the world enjoying photos of the richest dog in America living his best life while completely oblivious to his wealth. Rex had become a local celebrity, featured in newspaper articles about unique estate planning and responsible pet ownership. The trust regularly donated to animal welfare charities, making Rex not just wealthy but philanthropic. Meanwhile, Brittany's prenup sat in a file drawer somewhere, having protected her exactly as designed, from assets that no longer existed in my name, ensuring she received precisely what she'd earned through her greed and manipulation: absolutely nothing.